Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Cybersecurity Amplified and Intensified, the number one cybersecurity podcast with your host, Eric Taylor, and myself, Shiva Maharaj. Thank you for liking, subscribing, and sharing. Eric and I truly appreciate it. Eric, talk to me about vendor selection.
Man, I tell you what, if y'all been following me on, any of the social medias, I've been full of piss and vinegar this week. So this is going to be undoubtedly full of piss and vinegar. So I really want to talk about, to start it off, I want to give a real world example of some scenarios that's been happening. And we're not going to get real political, at least not at first anyway. I don't plan on
it. Not yet. Give it at least 30 seconds.
Exactly. But, everybody's been following this whole convoy that's been going up into Canada. What people may or may not know that they originally had a GoFundMe page, and GoFundMe was like, for whatever infinite reason, they said, oh, yeah, no, this is terrorism or whatever. And, they were going to do all kinds of stuff or whatever. And they ended up giving back. And then you had a bunch of news pundits, Glenn Beck and some other folks that were like, oh, well, let's just go with this Christian company, give a send a go. They won't bow down to the elitists or whatever. And you can give money that way and it'll go to those folks that are doing the whole convoy. Well, little did they know, Send and Go had an open S3 bucket. So anybody who gave donations was now public record because there was an unprotected S3 bucket logging all that data.
How common is that?
It's actually pretty common for a lot of throw together stuff. People who actually vet their software packages a little bit better are less likely to have it. Most of the time we'll see, S3 buckets that are just left behind, or like a subdomain or some sort of code that points to an S3 bucket is no longer existing. That's what we see most of the time. But
so if you are Mr. IR, and you were going to use that platform, what type of homework and reconnaissance would you do to figure out if they are worthy of your dollars?
Well, the things that always drive vendors nuts, especially in the MSP space and some of the lighter commercial spaces, I start investing them. Yeah. That's exactly what I do. So, this is the same reason why my kids are not allowed on TikTok. I don't trust, I'm probably going to start getting, hammered on my domains, but I don't trust China.
Why not?
Yeah, that's a different topic for a different episode. But yeah, I don't want my kids being subjected to it. I recently let little dude up on LinkedIn to let him mess around a little bit, but I'm monitoring that type of stuff. But I go back and I start owning this as like, okay, if I want to put money and support and actually use a product, I start owning this thing. And it's not who works for the company, which it's important. You got to make sure that they're not doing some goofy stuff. That's why me personally, I do not support KnowBe4, the whole Scientology thing. I don't agree with it. I'll probably get people with a van and a tree bird. We're doing a camera by the end of the week for saying that, but I don't care.
While we're on the KnowBe4 topic, because I think their product is an ideal example for me as to why I would not use something like that. Why in today's day and age are we still using a product where you have to whitelist something?
Yes.
Or allow list or whatever the PC term is.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, take the Scientology aspect out of it. Why is a security product not performing to real world scenarios?
Exactly. And what Shiva was saying, just to give a little bit more context, is when you're signing up for like a KnowBe4 or a lot of these other phishing campaign training programs, you have to whitelist in your content, in your filtering for a 365 or Gmail or whatever you're using, to allow emails coming from that domain to be bypassed in your filters. Kind of defeats the purpose. There's a lot of programs that are out there like Iron Skills, and I think Barracudas does this as well. There's probably even more that people will leave in the comments. Please do just let us know. But the content filtering platforms that are monitoring your emails will have a training program that you can be able to send. So they're able to inject right into your email anyway. So why use a third party? But anyway, I digress. That's just really, really bad stuff.
Strike one for vendors.
If we got to whitelist your stuff to make it work, it's probably not a good idea.
Stop talking about automate.
Oh.
And for those listening, we're talking about ConnectWise Automate, where you had to whitelist entire directories for your AV, EDR, next generation Kool-Aid to not light up like a Christmas tree.
Yeah, anytime Automate ran anything, exactly. But I loved Automate. I loved it when it was lab tech and everything. I still, barring the security around, away, and this is going to get a lot off topic, but I really like what you can do with Automate on an RMM standpoint. Their own engine, their scripting engine. I really think lab tech, at least from a feature set, is the Cadillac of RMM platforms. But anyway, that's not really what we're here to talk about.
Before we go on, we have Joshua Eller here. If I butchered your name, please let me know. I apologize. He is the man that sent in an email that brought you this episode. So if you like the episode, thank him. If you hate the episode, well, I blame you, Josh. But anyway, back to the episode.
Absolutely. Thanks for being here. But anyway, so yeah, definitely, if you got a lesson one, if you got to whitelist something for it to work, it's definitely probably not a good idea to use that vendor, right? Going back into the, ownisting your vendors. And again, it's not as much of ownisting of seeing what's on LinkedIn or whatever. You may want to, just like, are they supporting movements that you don't support with or whatever? Again, we're not going to get all that political, but, if you're, against BLM, or if you're against abortion or whatever, and if their company has a strong stance for that, you may not be want something. But anyway, you just want to make sure you're doing that type of homework to make sure that they are aligning with your beliefs and things of that nature. The second thing I really do as part of that whole ownisting thing is I start looking for subdomains that can be taken over. I start playing with their application. I start ripping it apart. I start doing it through malware, and I start reporting it under a trial to that company to see how do they act when an asshole like me starts reporting things to them.
What is the importance or significance of the subdomain takeovers to you as to why a product needs to do better in that realm?
It's not, so when you're doing a subdomain takeover, it really depends on what the subdomain points to, but it is, in essence, lack of hygiene. It really does not take much for an internal process to actually go through and say, okay, we're going to scan every 30 days, every 60 days, whatever their internal process, and start doing cloud enumeration products and things like that and see what's out there. The fact that they do not do that themselves, they're relying on somebody else to tell them that. It's a little bit of an,
or they're not even expecting it, right?
Yeah. I've talked about it before, and I'll say it again. Synchro had where you could be able to start signing up for any random subdomain as a tenant. And I set up an account, accounting.synchromsp.com as a tenant. And it took me like 3 months to explain to them, look, this is not a good idea. I can start emailing anybody I want to, because Synchro has the email playbook. I can start emailing people as accounting.synchromsp.com. It took a little bit.
That involves with them using a SendGrid or a Postmark or any of those third-party platforms that authorize emails to be sent from that from that subdomain, correct?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's still the same, but I do believe, if memory serves me correctly, they were using a SendGrid at the time. But yeah, I've done things, against other companies where it was their marketing platform. They were going to a marketing platform. I think it was not Kajabi, but there was another one. So I could just start enumerating that and start sending out spam and destroy their domain, and maybe even get a little bit more nefarious and say, they're doing, the whole billing thing. That's really a big thing. It's like, how are you going to get money from being a bad guy? How are you going to get that money to, make it worth it? And billing and all that stuff is that avenue, right?
What about being able to use subdomains to map out a client list? We came across an incident. I don't want to say we found it. Another party did. They told us about it. And I don't really want to talk publicly about who they are or what the company is because it's not our place. But if you had a account with this company, your subdomain is there in perpetuity. And now that helps for the bad guys to enumerate what us in the MSP world called our stack. And you can build targeting packages to evade those kinds of things in your stack.
Yeah, I know you're talking. For a minute there, I was like, "Who's he talking about?" But now I know who you're talking about. But yeah, that's, and that goes around a little bit of your own subdomain and your own nesting is making sure that your vendors are deleting traces of your existence if you part ways with them, right? So, that's, I don't know. So, like, if to take it to a little bit different of an aspect, let's just say hypothetically you had an ATP actively targeting your MSP. If they were trying to get in, they're going to start trying to find out what tools you have, and having these legacy things that are out there. Because if you don't think that they're not scanning Synchro, they're not scanning these other cloud applications that are allowing you to do your own subdomain registration, you're kidding yourself, right? So I want to think to some degree, and this may just be, conspiracy theory Eric talking here, but I wouldn't be surprised if some of the MSPs that are targeted are being targeted because of their giant foothold in different avenues and different platforms. As they're looking at these cloud vendors to potentially get into them, they're seeing a constant name, a constant MSP vendor.
Are you thinking reverse supply chain hits?
Exactly. So can they get into the MSP? And they're trying to get into that vendor. They're trying to get into the Datto, into the lab tech or whatever, but they keep seeing this one MSP name or one company name coming up over and over again because of the subdomains that they are allowed to have. Again, maybe a little bit conspiracy theory, but I do think that's part of it. And I've gotten to the point recently to advise people to stop doing your own subdomain CNAME records to these cloud tenants.
But you have to white label it to make yourself feel more important.
You know what? It doesn't take much to figure out where it's pointing to. I mean, come on.
Well, to the average consumer, which is the customer of some of these MSPs, they see, let's use my company, continuum.joeschmo.com. It was like, hey, or let's call it app.continuum.com. They must have built it. They are tip of the spear, or whatever circle jerk you want to call it. One thing I want to do is I want to go back to Josh here, who's in the audience, and he sent in an email asking us about a certain product, and it's ThreatLocker. I'm not a fan of it. It's a zero trust platform, which I give them immense credit for building something like that. My issue with ThreatLocker is that and let me preface this by saying I have not used this product since probably 2018, maybe 19. You have to run it in audit mode. Your best practice is to run this thing in audit mode for a week or two. And based on that, you go ahead and you automatically approve or whitelist those applications that are already on there. Now, the problem I see with that is you are actually going to whitelist persistence if it's already on there. So what's the point of this product, right? Unless you're going to sit there and put the technical and time effort in to really whitelist only what you need or what you want in there. The other thing is, while ThreatLocker may be a zero trust platform, is it in fact a zero knowledge platform? Can management or employees of ThreatLocker go into the platform, see your customers, and because it's an agent running the system, what are they able to do? Are they able to change policies without your approval? And telling me that telling me any vendor has processes and procedures in place to stop this doesn't mean it can't happen.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that we've always pushed back on. So we'll dive into that one because I think that's a great segue. That one of the questions that you specifically actually taught me this one to ask. But ThreatLocker, I was on a PAC State call not so long ago with a lot of MSPs, and it actually gave me a moment of pause where, in my small bubble, the stuff that I deal with, if you're not in the office, everything is SSL VPN back into the corporate environment, right? So you still have application control. You still have all these controls being provided by the firewall. And I just don't see the need for threat lockers. Like, look, granted, threat locker may be able to stop the application from starting, but you still got if you have a real firewall, you have application control that you can stop it at the firewall, right? So really short of stopping the application from actually running, really what's the point of it? The second point, what they actually brought up was, if you've got remote users under an IP set tunnel, not all the traffic is going over the corporate environment, just because there may not be enough bandwidth because you're a large company and you're very limited on your internet.
Or your MSP undersized the firewall, so you have shit throughput on your VPN.
Well, yeah, you do have that aspect as well. But if you're in that situation, I will give the crutch, like, okay, maybe something like a threat locker may be suitable for that particular situation. But before, and this is something we'll get into in just a little bit, but before you start bolting on new applications, for the love of dear God, find out what your existing applications can do. There's so many people that's in this industry that, and I'm talking about IT in general, right? Some CISOs, but the tech evangelists, they will buy a product and find out, what can this product solve versus flipping it on its head. I have a problem. What product can solve my problem? And this is the same thing that goes on all the time. And those that are watching, Shiva's writing something on cardboard, so I'm starting to get a little scared over here. But anyway.
Excuse the color. It's my kids.
I blame the onion. Oh my God, yes.
The security onion, or security is like an onion, is the biggest pile of security marketing and sales bullshit to make people double and triple up on tools without actually taking inventory of what they have and the capabilities they can gain from these things.
Exactly.
And I want to preface one thing about Threat Locker. I think it's a bad product? No, fundamentally, I think it could be good. I don't know what the DevSecOps are. I don't know what the controls internally are, so I can't speak to that. But anyone who is buying that product needs to understand what the technical devotion to that product is going to take in time and resources to configure it properly. Let me be politically correct here, or somewhat politically correct. I would not use a product like that if I had to run it in audit mode and automatically approve things. Mm-hmm. I would put it in audit mode and manually approve things. And if things looked gray market, gray area, what have you, I'd block it. I'd wait for the screams to come in and then see if we need it. But that's just my approach.
Yeah, that's the whole zero trust aspect of things, right? So refresh my memory. Isn't Threat Locker a or a channel only platform?
I believe so.
That's what I thought. So if they're channel only, that means there should be in deep communications and have a deep understanding of I'd say about 90-95% of the tools used by the MSP industry to be in the channel. Why the fuck do you need to do audit mode if you can just white label all the major or the majority of MSP tools?
Because whitelisting Kaseya, if you're a Kaseya shop, would have still screwed your ass over. Oh, not Kaseya, sorry. SolarWinds. Let's take Orion. Because of the complexity and elegance of that hack, everything was issued under its certificate. So if you whitelisted it, you still would have whitelisted persistence. So that wouldn't exactly be zero trust. But then again, neither is running it in audit mode and automatically approving things.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, if you're running stuff in audit mode and you already have malicious malware running, you're just whitelisting the malware, right? So, but anyway, so to take it back one more step, because And people who listen to us, this is not scripted, so we kind of jump all over the place. And I really didn't want to do that, but this is the way it's going to end up today. I think when we start getting engaged with companies and they starting to see what their tool sets are, I want to see what you think about this mindset. What I always talk to people is like, okay, get with your accounting department or whoever and get an inventory of everything that you pay for, every freaking tool that you pay for. Anything that comes up in under 3 months, start evaluating it. Right? Is the tool, is the metric, or is the, I'm losing my train of thought. So is the functionality of that tool that's coming up easily able to be duplicated in one of your other platforms that is already running? If not, then maybe it's worth keeping. But as you're keeping that, are you then saying, well, we're going to keep product Z, but because we're keeping product Z, when the renewal comes up for product J, we really don't need it because product Z is coming up with that, right? Doing your own assessment of like, do you really need all these tools? From a 30,000 foot view, I think is the first thing that a lot of people need to do when they're assessing their vendors, right?
Well, that is why I would recommend something like an asset inventory, an asset management, because you shouldn't have to go to your accounting department. You should be able to control acquisition of tools, and you should have it cataloged. And not only catalog what the tool is, but catalog what it does. So when you go to evaluate another tool, you can hit some type of matrix or asset inventory matrix to see if you have something similar.
But I don't think many people are doing that. I mean, we've seen the problem with the whole Log4j, right?
Not?
I think it's human nature, to be honest with you. I mean, let's take technology out of the situation for a second. We'll get to your spreadsheet in 1 second, but you take a company like Truebill that I've been seeing ads for in the past 3 months. People who subscribe to crap and forget about it. And you have companies like Truebill that are going through like, are you really using a subscription? You take that and you inject it into a business. This is what we have.
This is true. But again, it goes back to people, process, and procedures. And I think the easiest thing to do is to throw money at a problem or bodies at a problem and not document what is being done. And that spreadsheet that I was showing, that is the CIS version 8 control spreadsheet. I like it. And to quote Mr. Brian Weiss, it allows me, or has allowed me, to become more actionable because it tells you what to look for. And it kind of tells you what to do, right? And you build your process and procedure around it. Now, are you asking your vendors what type of compliance regime there, or security? Security and compliance can be mutually exclusive. But for the sake of this conversation, let's say, are you relying on your vendors to tell you what type of compliance set they're using in hopes of identifying their security levels?
So yes, but I hold it with a grain of salt.
Okay.
Right.
Why?
So we've seen companies, and again, I feel that we're going to say Kaseya's name a bunch in this episode, but Kaseya was at one point before the breach, touting how they were CMMC, I call the legacy CMMC.
Well, there is no version 2.0 because that's a steaming pile of shit. So just so you guys know, when we say CMMC, we are talking about the unicorn of the 5-layered cake of CMMC.
Yeah, but what I call the legacy before it got butchered into NIST 800-171. So no, legacy CMMC to me is the original CMMC. But anyway, they were touting that they were CMMC. And, I was like, maybe I should take a little look at Kaseya. And again, this is just, taking a look at stuff, right? But, the more and more I dug into it, their internal processes were supposedly CMMC. I've heard rumor, and I've looked and looked every so often. I'll start thinking about it and I'll go look at it again. There's been no FBI or NSA or anything like that that got involved with this that really said or denounced Kaseya's readiness for the legacy CMMC that they claimed all over their freaking internet.
But they were claiming it before it was even ratified or finalized.
Exactly.
So,
You know, it was still going through its changes and versioning and stuff, right?
Yeah.
So,
And I had a call with a Kaseya rep when they wanted me to renew my IT glue that the U.S. Air Force uses Kaseya VSA. VSA is their RMM, correct?
yeah,
I went on to FedRAMP. They're not listed on there. I don't know if the Air Force actually needs to follow those guidelines, but it would be nice.
I would think so. I mean, yeah, that's a good question. You would think that they would have to. So, I mean, them
But
saying
government contracting, government vendors and contracting is a black hole of very poor security.
It is because it's all self-attestation, like you said before. You know, 800-171 is saying, "Hey, yeah, I'm 800-171." It doesn't mean a whole lot of jack shit.
Would you go with a vendor that claims military grade encryption or military grade standards?
I would weigh them a lot heavier than I would somebody else.
Okay.
It would make me look at them harder. You know, it's like, okay, they say that they're this way. Are they really this way?
Well, that's the way I look at it. If they're going to make a claim, then I think I want them to put their money where their mouth is. Mm-hmm. What are the top 3 questions you would ask a vendor on first conversation to really establish if you want to put, you know, that 30 minutes or an hour into a demo or a conversation?
I ask, you know, if they have a VDP program, you know, vulnerability disclosure program, or bug bounty program, which most of the time I know this anyway, but just trying to see who I'm talking to actually knows our company, if they're going to lie to me or not. Because most of the time you're not getting
salespeople don't lie. What are you talking about?
You know, I ask, you know, the question that I stole from you is, can they see my data? You know, if they're able to go into my tenant or whatever, can they see it and
cryptographically?
Yeah. If they can, if any of that information is logged. So if Bob from level 2 goes into my tenant to do something, is that data being logged?
You know, the one question I would add to that, just as an opening salvo, is what happens to my data after I am no longer a client?
Exactly.
Is it purged? Is it held for a certain amount of time? Am I able to access the logs to that data if I'm no longer a customer? Because just because I'm no longer a customer doesn't mean I'm not entitled to see what a company is doing with data myself or my clients have put in.
Yeah, refresh my memory. There was it wasn't IT Glue, it was IT Boost, that's what it was. Where they held onto your data and it was a big shit show for a while.
IT Glue does that too. I've left IT Glue and gone back and my data was there just as though I never left. It wasn't updated because the connectors were shut down on their part, but once you spun back up, as long as the secret keys were the same, your data was there.
It's alarming. You know, the fact that they're holding that data for so long.
Well, when you consider the type of data in an IT Glue or any documentation platform, I don't want to keep shitting on Kaseya. Kind of do, but not this time, maybe. That is your architecture for your clients. It's at times username and passwords, secret keys, API keys. So what are you going to do when a company like that does not want to delete your data because they, and I quote, I've been told by them, they want to make it really easy for you to come back.
I mean, I think that's going to be really a legal action, right? So
yeah, but
almost like
does the average MSP have the dollars to go up against a Kaseya?
Maybe not the dollars, but I think the way that social media works nowadays,
okay,
I think that could be, if someone was able to get a big enough voice behind them, that may be even more powerful than legal action.
Reddit it is.
I mean, it could be Reddit, it could be Twitter, it could be a combination of everything. Right. You know, like this podcast, you know, we got the audio, we got the YouTube, we got the LinkedIn, we got the Twitter, and I'm now pushing it to stupid Twitch and all that. But, you know, it's all about, you know, the multiple venues to push your message out.
I have another question that I ask vendors, and this is one of my favorite questions to ask them.
Ooh, I know where you're going.
Go for it, if you know. Whatever you say, I'll say that's it.
No, go ahead. I don't want to. Go ahead. Do it.
Are you channel only?
Yes.
followed up by when they proudly say, yes, we are channel only. Why? Is it because you're dealing with an immature crowd? And I don't mean personnel, that the owners are immature. Just it's a very young vertical. I think, yes, it's about 20, 25 years old, but I feel like if you're channel only, you're doing that for two reasons. You want to run your MLM thing of getting a few customers to bring you even more. But more so, the MSP community doesn't really understand how to vet the security of MSP type products.
Exactly.
Whereas an enterprise has more at stake to lose. So they tend to generally vet their vendors a little more or a little better.
Well, let's just be honest. So when you're not, I don't want to say MSP only, I'll just say this as a general term, but when you're vetting a company, you are typically worried and concerned about functionality and the ease of use of a product. Until you get to my side of the fence, and you don't have to be like Uber Sans guy and you're ripping and dissecting and reverse engineering shit, because that's just the way I live. Unfortunately, that's just my world. But I enjoy that. But anyway, I digress. When you get past functionality and prettiness, and you look at what is this data collecting, what is being passed through the wire, what can I see, what can I not see, what can other people see? When you start actually getting past that stuff, then you start really asking these questions. Go ahead.
I have a question for you based on that.
Here we go.
Did you happen to come across something like that yesterday?
Oh, I knew you were going to say this. You know what? I don't care. Here we go. Because there's nothing. I was debating this morning because you and I were talking on our private Slack channel. I was like, man, I'm just going to go to Twitter and blast this out. And you're like, proper disclosure. And I was thinking about there's nothing vulnerable, at least that I could see right now. Right. And we'll see that. We'll get that in a second. But there's nothing vulnerable. There's nothing that it's actionable to a threat intelligence to take this thing down. And I'll just say it. It's Cloud Radio. Cloud Radio hates me because I took over one of their subdomains that was marketing. And I'm like, yeah, guess what? And then they really, really do not like me. But
did they ever fix it?
They fixed it, but they were pissed at me for doing it. I've heard they will not talk to me. So I've heard through back channels that they did not like the fact that I did a subdomain takeover and I disclosed it to them and they wouldn't answer. So I went to some other folks that were a little bit noisier than I am to get them to actually fix it. So gotcha. they were not happy. But anyway, so I was doing Cloud Radio stuff and I'm like, okay, a company wanted me to look at them and I'm not going to name the company, but so I take their installer, I start ripping it apart and I'm like, why is it communicating here and why is it communicating there? And what the hell is all this other code in here? And it's just, there's a lot of breadcrumbs in Cloud Radio. Like a US-based company.
That is.
In the agent. Because that's what I was asked to dissect and start ripping apart. And I just went down a rabbit hole like I normally do. But the agent communicates. So Cloud Radio is based in Texas. Their agent will communicate with a US-based Azure blob, and it will communicate with a UK-based blob. Why is that happening? The fuck if I know.
GDPR.
But see, wouldn't those agents be segmented? Why would you want a US? Yeah, because if the US one is doing it, I imagine that the UK agent's doing the same freaking thing. It's going to do the UK blob. It's going to do the US blob. I don't know. Again, these are
load balancing.
I don't know.
Okay.
But why? The other one I asked them to ask Cloud Radio was, if you're going to use US servers, why is your wildcard.us.cloudradio.com, I think is the URL, using a SSL search from Great Britain? Again,
something got bought along the way and asset management is non-existent.
I don't know. It's just a bunch of these. This is what I'm saying. When you start digging and you start finding just weird shit. It's like, you got to ask them about this stuff. So, those two, that are watching here, you really should be watching. But anyway, we'll bring this question up because Josh was asking some crazy questions. I love it. So it is getting to the point of hosting your own infrastructure versus cloud infrastructure. Oh, dear God, Joshua, I'm sorry.
Can I give my 2 cents?
Go ahead and I'll give mine.
Oh, fuck no. I would not host infrastructure anymore because there are a number of vulnerabilities that are discovered and not disclosed to partners who host their own version of a piece of software.
Mm-hmm.
There's a little company that this happened to on July 2nd of 2021 last year. Their cloud SaaS version was mitigated by a WAF, and their on-prem partners were left to fend for themselves. So that alone is reason to let them host it.
So if you're going, I take a little bit of different stance because I am quote unquote old school. I love servers. I love watching things go blinky blinky in a dark room, and it makes me feel all happy and excited.
They're so noisy.
They are, but still, I love servers. The ability to be able to spin your own crap up and do DevOps and just all that. I just love servers. But let me put this at a 30,000 foot view level for you. Okay. If you own your own home or you own your own car, forget the legal aspects of things out of this thing, but you protect it by buying insurance, right? It's the transfer of risk. This is the same thing that you're doing with cloud. You are essentially transferring the risk of hosting your own shit into a company that you believe has your back. You could be with a bad insurance company that denies your claims and find out that, Allstate or All Covered or not All Covered, sorry, not that fucking company. State Farm or whatever is, supposedly supporting you, but they're not. They deny your claims and you're holding the bag. It's kind of the same thing. You want to partner with a business that you believe has your back and has your best interests at heart. Now, granted, they're there to make $1 too, but that's from a 30,000 foot view. That's what you want to do. If you're going to do your own internal infrastructure, I'll stand there with you. All right, what do you need? Well, let's do it. But I'm that guy, right? I don't mind spinning up Exchange servers and making sure that they're properly patched because I know how to go through and do it.
But you're not supposed to patch them because people won't get their emails. It may not come back up, and don't patch the drivers, and make sure you put the iDRAC on the internet with default credentials for public IP.
You're trying to trigger me with so many MSP vendors right now. I swear to God. So, yeah, I can't
We've seen all of the above.
Yes, we have. There was a company, and I'm not going to mention the name, but their channel only vendor that had their server hosted in Rackspace, and they had their iDRAC exposed to the internet with default credentials, and they got in and encrypted all the hard drives in there with ransomware. So we see the level of stupidity that, trust me, people are like, oh, cybersecurity, is really, really hard. But guess what? It's not really hard to friggin' stop the stupid shit. Come on. But anyway, this is going to get all good. So Joshua, nobody will ever buy me a beer. So that's why we have a coffee. Yeah. Amplifiedintensify.com. That somebody else will, we got
Be careful. We got an email. Someone saying all we're trying to do is sell our own services.
Yeah, whatever.
I just want to call out stupid shit, but hey, that's mine.
For 1 second, if he's listening, this platform is not sponsored by anybody, right? We don't have people sponsoring and spending advertising dollars to be on our platform.
And I don't think anyone wants that.
But we're not entertaining it, right? We want to be able to come in here and spew our shit.
Unless they're going to give us fuck you money. Then I will definitely maybe consider.
Maybe consider.
Kaseya, you could pay me and I'm still going to shit on you.
Yeah. No, I think the only one we actually tried to go after was Black Rifle Coffee Company because they got coffee and we love coffee.
I would have taken payment in coffee from those guys.
Exactly. That'd have been awesome. That would have been an awesome sponsor. But anyway, we're not taking sponsors. We're doing this for out of the kindness of our heart, so to speak. And it's to grow our businesses to a certain degree, but we also want to educate people. So it is a trifecta, right? So, but anyway, I digress because I don't want it to become all about us. But anyway, so we talked about the questions that you should really ask your vendors when you start your initial conversation. We talked about, getting people together and, really starting to test your platform beyond the functionality and the GUI aspect of things. We talked about the hate for the security onion, like always. We shit on Kaseya a little bit. Let's see. What else?
I have one other thing.
Okay.
Vendor selection does not end at the acquisition of said vendor. You should still be looking at your vendors even while you have them. And as Eric mentioned earlier, 3 months to renewal, really give it a go, give it a look. Get Eric, because I'm biased, right? But get a version of Eric to run through some of your programs and see if they are secure, see if they're leaking data. And understand that sometimes you're going to have to just stop using a product even though you're in contract with it. Don't stick with something just because you're in contract.
Metasploit, you're triggering me, dude, or chick or whatever. But yeah, I mean, I was running Metasploit on a Linux box last week. So there you go. See some of my Linux tools come back and say thank you. So, but anyway, yeah, I mean, people just need to really do their own homework, right? So there's one thing that you brought up, that the question that you said that I don't think we really dove into it that much, right? And I want to make perfectly clear about this one, the channel only vendors, right? I really do think that they are in a position to build up numbers for acquisition, right? And if they come, if Rocket Cyber is a prime example, they touted a good line to everybody, and we all thought, even myself, that they were in it for the long haul, trying to make the security of the space better. And they just weren't. So when you're looking at these channel only people, are you looking at them at a long-term situation, right? I mean, forget about the contract renewals, right? They renew every month, or not every month, but every year or 3 years, whatever your contract renewal is. But start asking them, do you believe that they have your interest and that you can grow with them over 5 years, 10 years, whatever the case is?
Should people be signing a contract more than a year?
I say no, just because there is so much that changes with a vendor. Yeah, you and I have seen it.
Or yourself.
Yeah. You and I have seen it where we have gone into a vendor thinking the world of them. 6 months into it, we're like, yeah, you did a good smoke and mirrors.
6 months into it, you realize you got 6 months left on your contract.
Yeah. Yeah, I won't say who it is right now. It will probably come out soon, but
Drop
there is
those CVEs. Drop
Yeah,
those
those
CVEs.
CVE drop those. But yeah, it's getting to the point where, sorry for the little fat man dance that you saw there, but I'm fed up. I've talked to the CISO and before, and they're like, if we don't fix your stuff in a reasonable time, then we won't be mad at you for doing CVEs. And the CISO's not taking my calls in, right? They're not being very proactive on fixing stuff.
Yeah, but that would require a code rewrite.
It does require code rewrites on some of this stuff, but you know what? Some of this stuff has been it's been almost 6 months now, and I'm just like, enough is enough, gentlemen.
Pop quiz. Are there products or product categories you should not even go into a yearly contract and stay month to month with, say, a 30 or 60-day out clause?
Probably.
What categories do you think that would be?
definitely your EDR,
Okay.
definitely your RMM PSA.
Okay.
Fuck it. All
PSA,
your
really?
Yeah.
Okay. I can see that.
I mean, we've seen it before where there's been, data, they have points that stores data in unencrypted containers before.
This is true. And for those listening, the CrowdStrike Horizon platform is a fantastic product to identify misconfiguration of identities and containers in the cloud.
Yeah, I got some PowerShell stuff for that. But anyway.
Or just,
But as long as you're doing it, it's the case, right?
Eric was sharing some intel with some people yesterday, and they're all saying, thanks for it, whatever. And I joked around. I said, all these companies have millions of dollars behind him. I got an Eric. It's like, dude, take a look at this. Tell me what you think. And part of being in the IT world is network with people, because that will pay in dividends for you. And if you consider them a friend, a colleague, or you like them, pay them. Don't expect it for free.
Yeah, there's...
Buy them coffee. Buy them hookers and blow. Don't do that.
No, don't. My wife would be very mad. Please don't do the hookers and blow part.
That was a joke.
Yes, please.
But my point is that I think everyone should really start going into their accounting books and going into their logins and whatever logs you collect and really create a list. It doesn't have to be anything fancy, of all the products that you have. List out their features. List out their contract dates and their renewals. List out if you like them or not. And really give it a hard look. Do you need that security onion? Do you need 40 products, or can you get away with 10?
Yeah, I mean, limiting your footprint on your endpoint is critical. But granted, you want the onion, you want multiple layers. I get that. But when you have to buy 5 different products just to span one layer of your onion, that's 5 applications that you got to keep up with and make sure they can't be compromised. When you're making your list, also list out what the product does not do that you wish it could do. And that's a conversation with your vendors. When you're going up for your renewals, you're like, yeah, I would really love to renew, but it really doesn't do D, F, and G, right? So, and see how that works, That's another way to see if a company is with you long term. They're willing to go through, right? So that's just, there's so many different ways to do it. So be proactive. Have many. I mean, Shiva, you and I have been with CrowdStrike for a while now. I think we're even coming up on our 1 year.
I've been there for about 2, maybe 2.5, give or take.
And guess what, guys? We're still talking to CrowdStrike. We even talked to them earlier today.
Yeah. We actually invited them into our own personal Zoom room that we run all day, every day.
Yeah, because we got that kind of power. I'm just kidding. But
okay.
We're constantly...
I can work with that.
But we're constantly talking to them, right? We're like, hey, we need this to be done. We need that to be done.
That's a good point, is you should feel comfortable going to your vendors, asking for a new feature or asking them to make changes to their platform. They may or may not do it, but I think how they respond to you is very much telling of the type of relationship you may or may not have with them.
Exactly. So
that's pretty much it for me. You got anything else, Eric?
No, just read through the comments and everything like that. So big shout out. Thanks to everybody who watched this thing live. Really do appreciate it. And bringing in your questions and everything like that.
I got some housekeeping. Oh, there we go. Could you have CrowdStrike on the show or do a demo? Josh, we've got a couple episodes in the catalog where we had Cameron Buriani from CrowdStrike on, one for Pegasus and one for just CrowdStrike in general. He is coming back on in the middle of March.
Yep, for XDR.
We don't do demos because, there are a lot of other companies that do that, but we go in depth as to what the functionality is. If you'd like a demo, reach out to Eric or myself. We'd be more than happy to give you one.
Yeah, we can even spin up a trial for you.
Yeah,
really
whatever you need.
So.
And I guess two things for housekeeping for us is we have a cybersecurity roundtable with some people who I would think are infinitely smarter than myself. And that is Vince Chrysler of Dark Cube. We have John Murchison of Blackpoint Cyber, Alan Liska, and John Wetzel of Recorded Future. I don't know if John's going to make it.
No, John's out of town or incognito or whatever for the next couple months.
And we have the infamous Matt Lee of PAX8, who, unlike me, wants to raise the tide. God bless his heart.
Ladies and gentlemen and ghouls that are out there on the internet, if you have made it this far, thank you so much for tuning in for yet another episode of AmplifiedandIntensified.com. You know what? A recent change to the platform. Shiva has put together a new website, AmplifiedandIntensified.com. If you have heard anything that you have liked about this podcast and you want to engage Shiva or myself, or be able to help sponsor by donating us some coffee, all the links of our calendars, buying us coffee, past episodes of both the podcast and the YouTube version are all now on AmplifiedandIntensified.com. Go there for all of your needs. Thank you so much. And until next time, take care.